Hi there, and welcome to the Leaky Bucket Podcast. I'm your host, Ian Morgan, and this is the Financial Performance Podcast for entrepreneurs looking to get a better understanding of their numbers, to plug the leaks in their business, and to move from surviving to thriving. Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the Leaky Bucket Podcast. Today we have with us Nikitas Tsoukales, who's a certified serial entrepreneur with 3 Inc. 5000 awards recognizing his ventures on the list of the fastest growing private companies in the US. He loves helping businesses grow very, very quickly. He's currently the CEO of RealTop, a digital marketing agency based in Boston, Massachusetts, helping some of the fastest growing private companies in North America scale like crazy using digital advertising platforms like Google, Microsoft, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. Nick, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me on, Ian.
So, Nick, we have a bit of tradition here, so straight away, let's just get to know you and see what makes you tick and get the listeners a bit of an option to really understand you. So, in your opinion, what do you think you're most well known for?
I think I'm most well known for, personally, just being funny, cracking jokes, making the room a little lighter. And I would say even in the business world, people think business is this separate world, but really it's just people exchanging value. But you can bring that to your business development efforts. You can bring that to your quote unquote networking and your connecting. So I think that's one of the biggest things that I bring to the table. Let's lighten up and enjoy ourselves. Life is short.
Couldn't agree more. Nick, what do people misjudge about you the most?
Well, actually, I've seen this misjudgment from my employees. I think sometimes people think I'm like some strict dictator leader because I have the title of owner or CEO or something. And let's say there's some employees I haven't met or haven't connected with yet because they have like direct supervisors, and then I get on the phone with them and they realize that I'm exactly like them. I'm human, and I've done a lot of all the jobs they've done, and any one of my companies I've usually done myself, and I have experience in doing it. And I think they're just surprised to see that I'm not this evil boss dictator guy. A lot of people have uh, this impression of someone in some sort of like a leadership role, that they're like some dictator, head honcho, type A alpha, go get them, no excuses type, and then they realize, hey, you're just like another guy. You just happen to have been doing this a little longer, and you happen to possibly be in a leadership position.
Brilliant. And what are the 3 most important values that you live by?
Brutal honesty, number one. Incredible, insane work ethic, uh, and trying to leave every interaction, every room that you enter a little better, at least a little better, net positive, versus when you first enter that room. And I feel like in my own little mind, I've created this thing where, if I can go along my what seems like a super boring day, and all of my little interactions lift people up just a little bit more, there's a ripple effect. And then beyond that, you really don't know, especially in 2022, what's going on in people's minds. Like, the mental illness is real. People suffer low self-esteem. There's so many thoughts that are going through people's minds, and you don't know how low someone can be in that particular day. And sometimes, if you open the door the right way for them, or give them that extra little smile in traffic, or wave to them, maybe that's going to be the thing that starts to restore their faith in humanity and people. And I think that all human beings can do that just in their routine. Like, you're driving to work and someone cuts you off and flips you the finger. You smile and say, "I'm sorry," even if maybe you made a mistake, and you almost seem, why aren't you yelling at that person? And I'm not perfect. There's plenty of times I have, but maybe that's the day where you just give them a smile and say sorry, and they're like, "Oh man, maybe I was being a little harsh. Maybe I can reflect a little bit. Maybe I should look at my life." And I feel like you can change lives without doing a sit down with someone you don't know and telling them how to change their lives. Maybe you could just wave with a smile or say, "I'm sorry," and it's that first step. So I think anyone can, everyone can change the world just by doing that.
Yeah. Yeah, I really like that. I'll come back to that, Nick, and explore it a little bit deeper in a minute, but let's just carry on fire in the other areas. So would you would you rather, right, win, but you have no issues at all? Or would you rather fall short and learn something new on that journey?
Initially, when you asked that question, I'm like, win and no issues. Please just give me the prize. Let's keep it moving. Um, but if I'm being a little bit more mature, I would say probably lose, learn something, and become a better person. And that is winning. You know, if you can learn something that's going to get you closer towards your path to good karma, to God, however you want to phrase it, and your listeners, you know, and however the audience wants to look at it, there's something to that. The idea every day is to show up and to grow, but that doesn't necessarily just mean to grow our pockets. You know, how are we growing as human beings? Richer doesn't mean more fulfilled. Um, just because you have more doesn't mean you're happier. And even happiness, you might be happier getting the prize that day without having made a challenge. You probably are happier. Hey, I got a prize. This is awesome. Um, but happiness doesn't always even equal fulfillment. So the challenge is, you know, and learning and becoming better as a person, as a professional. I think that does make you feel more fulfilled, especially when you reflect.
Yeah. Yeah, like, it always brings out some interesting answers that, there's always that, "Oh, yeah, but I wanna win, but, oh, yeah, but I do wanna learn, I do wanna be able to move forwards." There's always that balance effect that everyone seems to have. I think the other area is that success means so many different things to so many different people. For you, what is success?
Oh, for me, it's one word. It's just like it's freedom. Freedom. You know, being able to go where you want, when you want. Uh, you know, without anyone telling you no. For me, that is everything. You know, I come from like a Greek immigrant family, and we were raised like you know, freedom or death. Like this is something you heard growing up in Greek school. You listen, you know, you read the history books. Freedom was everything, and then in the United States, obviously being here, so it's very much the mantra here. Um, and making a bunch of money and buying a bunch of stuff, like, that doesn't really do much for me. I bought some shiny things in my life, and 10 minutes later, I was like, all right, this stinks. You know, you buy a really nice car and you realize it's like, you got to watch out for every curb, and God forbid you bump into someone. Um, that stuff gets old pretty quickly, but freedom, there's something magical to it. And it doesn't mean you got to jump on a private jet and parade all over the planet. And, you know, it's just a matter of being able to get your kids off of school bus. I think there's something special about that. My dad didn't have the ability to always do that. And my mom didn't always have the ability to do that, you know, and I feel, especially in this entrepreneurial journey, um, you know, it doesn't mean you're going to work less, but you might be able to call the shots a little bit more in your life and be a little bit more the architect of your day to day. And I think it's cool, and I've always loved it. And you know, to really think back, like when I was in school, you know, there's certain points where I really probably my ego kicking, and I didn't like when the teachers told me when I had to be somewhere. You know, I had the most late in the history of my high school. I don't think anyone's broken that record, and it got to the point where, like, I would be at class all time on time, and the bell would ring, and I would walk out so I can walk back in late, just to prove a point, like, "Hey, no one controls me." Bit of an ego, and not saying anyone should to just act like that. It's a jerk move, 100%. Um, but I could see where this journey of owning a business is super tied to people who care about freedom, and doing what they want when they want. Like, there's a direct correlation. A lot of the business owners I meet, the occasional person just found an opportunity to make tons and tons of money. But the more and more I meet guys that are in, 40, 50, 60s, they've maybe gone through the corporate world a little bit and left. They love their freedom. You take away all their cool toys, give them their freedom though. Then gold.
Yeah. Nick, you actually pushed on something that was a good area actually I like to go into these on occasions, right? You said about an ego. I've got this belief that in order to start a business, and have that resilience to move forward, you have to have some degree of ego, because most businesses are born out of thinking that you can do this better or quicker
Yeah.
than the competition. But I think there also has to become a point then throughout that journey where you have to learn to control that ego, because actually you can't do this on your own. You need to hire people who are better than you at certain aspects of things to do those things. Was there a particular moment where you realized that?
Oh
Um,
my God, yeah. Holy smokes. I mean, it happened to me. So, when I first started, my first company was a credit restoration company, and it's a company I still own, and I'm very, very proud of, and I'm proud of my team. But when we started, myself, my sister, and really just like a couple of our friends that were willing to endure the crazy idea. It was great, right? Because, like, we were all so close to each other. It was always brutal honesty. Like, if I did something stupid, my sister would yell at me. She'd be like, "What are you doing, idiot?" Right? And I might not have liked it because I was the boss, quote unquote, right? But she would quickly remind me. I had my first office was next door to my father's restaurant, right? My father had a building, and he was a good enough dad. He said, "Take this space," and he gave me my first office space, right? And like, another brutally honest person, and then our friends, brutally honest, because they didn't see me as a boss. I was their friends or family members, and I didn't see them as my employees. We are just like all hanging out, and working, and trying to make a living, right? But as we started to grow and scale and put systems in place and do a lot of this fancy corporate stuff, we had our org chart and all this stuff. Um, I would hire people that began to really start to yes me to death, and they would feed my ego all day long. It was like having a fan club, and there were really only one or two people that didn't, and they were a pain in the they were a complete pain in the ass, because they told the truth. But those people that just yes me to death, I wasn't able to grow as a result of it. They didn't challenge me. And in fact, when you continue to do that in an organization, you do it for good purposes. Like, a lot of companies, if you're not yesing the CEO to death, like, you're the enemy. Like, people will, oh, my way or the highway type of stuff. But if you find yourself working in a company like that, you probably should leave, because that company's going to fall apart soon. So when I got to the point where everybody was yesing me to death, after that initial pop and that growth, and no one had any new ideas, everything I would say was gold. I noticed we went stagnant, like, our business plateaued, and actually started going down. There were no new ideas. Once I got tired and burned out just a little bit, there was no one to pick up the pieces because it was Nick's show. And that's a horrible place to be. So yeah, you should not only be hiring smarter people than you, but be hiring people that are willing to challenge the status quo. And actually, obviously, respect the status quo. It's there for a reason, and it got you to where you are. Um, but they should be they should be willing to create new ideas and new initiatives, and still be able to challenge your current system and processes. And if you can't hire people like that, you're hiring robots. And the second you're too tired to program those robots a certain way because you're a little burnt out, or maybe you've lost motivation because the thrill is gone. Running a new business and growing it is it's like a new heart relationship. You gotta keep the light going, the fire going. As soon as you lose that a little bit, business just it died. So um, don't make the mistake that I made, which was in a lot of ways creating systems and processes, but failing to hire people that created systems, processes, and challenging the status quo. Because you'll find yourself eventually plateauing and actually going down. Um, when I started the digital marketing agency, the first hire I made, um, the person I hired, Jake, and I tell him this all the time. I was like, the only reason you have this job, well, there are many reasons you have the job, but the thing that really sold me on you was the fact that you were a pain in the ass at our last company because you worked there and you were always questioning everything. And I respected that. I was like, this is a person I can grow with. And everyone we're hiring right now, I challenge them to, guys, got any ideas? What do you got? Can you create something? Please, I'm the dumbest guy in the room. I didn't graduate from college. You guys are all smarter than me. You're more academic than me. You have higher IQs than me. Can you please challenge me? Because I can only get us so far.
Yeah. Yeah, I love it. We do. I've got an accounting firm that we run, and when we hire new people who come from other firms, we're like, just challenge what we're doing, because if if we just keep doing what we believe to be true, what if that's not true?
Yeah.
And how do we know if we don't have something to test it against? Because we did it because we thought it was a great idea, but yeah, but what if you can improve it just by 1% or 2%? And yeah, we start to, yeah, we had that recently with a quarterly planning session we did, that people were struggling to come up with ideas. And we were just like, look, we're looking for marginal improvements. If we can improve by 1% any area that you can suggest, we left that meeting with 19 actions. And we were like, if that improves us by 19%, we're winning.
Yeah, of course it is. And that's what you have to look for. And you guys did the best thing. I think by the way, that's one of the things that's going to happen with all this remote work. A lot of these companies right now, they're going to have an issue because they're not having the water cooler talk. If you've ever worked in a corporate environment and there's like 50 people in an office, there's always 5 people in the kitchen just talking trash about the company. There's all like literally they're talking trash about the managers, talking trash about their coworkers, they're talking trash about um, the processes, the systems, the branding, the leads, the marketing. Everyone's talking trash at the kitchen, right? Water cooler talk, as we like to call it. But guess what? People pick up on it. You know what I mean? You go to lunch with your coworkers and you kind of like go off the record and you start coming up with initiatives and ideas and you bring it back to the office and you're like, hey, boss, like, me and John were just talking about this over a tuna sandwich. Like, what do you think about A, B, and C? You know what I mean? But when you're in the trench, or actually when you're on Slack all day, in Teams all day, it's so much easier. Like it's easy to delegate your work through those systems and have people report through those systems, and you can keep people accountable to KPIs. Okay, cool. But there isn't a lot of shit talking that you
Yeah.
kind of need. Um, the water cooler talk it works. It really pushes the status quo a little bit. And the boss hears rumors. Hey, what were they talking about over there? Are we under siege? Are these people going to go on strike soon? They're having a conversation in the kitchen. Um, maybe I need to look at how I'm managing. Maybe I need to look at some ways to improve things. Let's get them in a room. Let's have a talk. Let's jump in the conference room. Let's take them for coffee. Let's go off record with my team. You can't go off record using Slack or Teams. It's very difficult.
No. What's interesting, it's almost like you were a fly on the wall at our quarterly planning, because actually what was highlighted from a couple of members of the team were the little 5-minute huddles that we're having at the start of each day for the remote workers isn't working. So they suggested we needed like a water cooler Wednesday, and that happened for the first time today. And actually it was just, there is no work topics. It's not likely to be work, apart from, unless there's, yeah, it can be a little bit bitching and moaning, and that's fine. Like, as long as we're not in that mode 90% of the day.
Yeah.
Y It's human nature. We still need to be able to do it. So, yeah, it's almost like you knew what had been going on with the numbers.
I think it's more common than not, this scenario, and I think in 5 years, we're gonna look back and go, "Oh, man, we missed out on a lot." Like, I actually I'm operating 2 fully remote companies, okay? So I'm gonna be a bit of a hypocrite here, and a lot of my team is abroad, so I don't really have a way to fully bring them into the office right now, but I'll tell you, if I was running a company that had, like, a regional, footprint in terms of my staff, I'm 99% sure I think I'd make it mandatory for everyone to be in the office every day. I actually I think it's great, what a lot of these companies are trying to do. I think a year or 2 from now, these companies that are doing that, I think they're going to smoke everybody in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I can see we've got a similar setup. We've got an allegiance of foreign stuff, and yeah, we've hired them throughout, like, the UK and not had people in our offices. Yeah, you can feel like the culture's there, but it's not as strong as in, like, you getting everybody. It's those meetings when you just before when you're going into a meeting or whatever, and then you go, "Ah, I know your dad was unwell, but, like, how's he doing?" And, like, those bits don't happen when you're doing a Zoom meeting. You just go, "Right, boom, we're on, let's start, done, we're finished, close." And the little small talk, it's gone. And
You're not human anymore. When you're managing simply to the KPIs, all right, you're managing to an Excel spreadsheet. Let's be real here. And I'm going to speak as a sales leader, right? I was always in sales roles. Um, you know, when you see your salespeople walk in through the door and they don't speak, let's say they don't speak no matter what to you. Let's say they always walk in and sit down at their desk. That happens every single day. But one day they walk in and their shirt's a little bit more wrinkled, their hair's a little off, their mannerisms are not matching how they consistently are when they're performing well. Maybe you can walk over, you can sense it, you can read it. You're not even thinking about this. You can feel it. You're like something's up with John. Let me go over to his desk. Hey John, what's up, man? You want to grab a coffee with me real quick? Yeah, let's go walk down to the cafeteria. What are you up to? What's going on? And what are you doing? You're having a conversation. You might find out someone is having an issue at home. Someone is sick. They just broke up with their girlfriend. Their dog just passed away. You have all these different life circumstances, and you're going to address that human a little differently that day. They're not just going to be about the KPI. It's going to be, hey, why don't you go home and take a rest? Why don't we pull you aside and let me help you out today? Why don't you partner up with your coworker and see if they can help you out with a couple of these deals that you're working on, and help you kind of just get through this bad week. You can't do that when you're managing just simply to the KPI. I wish we could just measure that vibe and put it on a spreadsheet and manage it, but you really can't. One thing that we've done in both my companies is like we're annoyingly using video where, like, let's say I'm talking to someone on Slack. I may just call them, but if there's ever a scenario where I'm like, I would have walked into their office or walked over to their desk, I video call. And I tell people, like, don't stress if you're not looking like, you'd be in an office. Let's get on a video call. Because again, a lot of times you'll see their mannerisms. "Hey, what's going on? How you doing? You're all right over there? What's happening?" Like, someone's hair is over here, over there. Like, "Hey, you don't look like you slept." Like, did the kids keep you up at night? Your parents working for you. And that's something I've actually told my leadership team, get off of freaking chat. Stop chatting all the time. Someone sends you a chat, do a voice call back. If someone voice calls you, turn on video. Um, whatever form of communication they're using, try to respond back with the form of communication that might be that it will give you a better connection. And that actually goes the same. We've done this with customer service in the past. Client that was local called in, ticked off, and we're like, "Hey, well, you want to come by the office? Let's sit down and look at this together." Really? Yeah, I'd love to do that. Okay. Someone sends an email and they're ticked off. You respond via email. No, John, I'm going to call you right now. And you call that person. Always in your interactions, especially if someone is disgruntled, try to I don't know what the word is, but try to step up your communication channel. Like go one step further on your reply. And you'll find you'll more quickly resolve things, you'll connect with people better, it will fly, you know.
Yeah, it's almost like humanize a world that's becoming more dehumanized.
100%. And now you got Mark Zuckerberg trying to put us into the metaverse. I mean, that guy should just, I think he's going straight to hell for this whole project. And I miss their Facebook marketers. I can't talk too much trash, but I think he's lost perspective.
Yeah. Nick, brutal honesty, right? Where did it come from? Was it because you didn't experience it at some point, or was it because you've always experienced it and you don't want to be without it?
Where did what come from?
The brutal honesty.
Oh, the brutal honesty. I wasn't always like that. Um, I was like, and in my nature is to be very agreeable, make people feel good. Um, but I think in the last few years, I've noticed it just doesn't work. Like I think it's just good to just get things out, tell people exactly how you feel. And you don't need to be brutal. I think that's what we tell ourselves, brutal honesty, because for us, very agreeable people, we have to kind of rev ourselves up and get the testosterone going. Like, we're going to be brutally honest. And then we're like, hey, Tim, can I tell you something? I was just thinking about uh, in our quiet voice. Um, but I'm trying to transition to becoming more and more of a less agreeable person and just telling people how it is. Um, because I think that's what's going to garner the most respect. Um, and I think that's what long term is going to give you the most valuable relationships with the people that have you don't want to surround yourself with people with egos as well. You don't want people feeding yours and you don't want to feed others, because if you do, eventually what you find is you just start hanging out with like a small group of narcissists that just love the fact that you're completely agreeable with them 24/7, right? So those are just like the daily interactions, friendships, network circles, right? But then we go into the brutal honesty of a sales process at a business. And that's a place where I really tried to be brutally honest for a long time. That's a place I haven't been agreeable. And that's been by design. I notice right now, if you call a company, so many companies, they're so quick to really just tell you everything you want to hear so they can get you on board. And then once you're on board, you find that the experience at the company, the result of what you're getting really isn't a match with what you were led to believe. And ultimately, what happens is you get buyer's remorse, you're ticked off, the company gets bad reviews, and eventually ceases to exist, right? Um, and so many people are expecting this. This has become the darn norm. In so many companies, just like, yeah, make people feel good, everything they want to hear. And then again, the product and the service doesn't match the pitch, right? And buyer's remorse. And I've always taken this approach where I tell people the worst possible scenario. I'm brutally honest and transparent about a process. And I go into so much detail, like in credit restoration, for example. When I got into that industry, there were so many companies that were like, yeah, just sign up here. We'll erase everything on your credit and that'll be that. Give me $2,000. I was like, wait a second, that's not the truth. The truth is you could sign up, um, pay for many, many months, and your results could vary drastically. You could have the most amazing credit after 6 months, or quite possibly your credit could be far worse. Okay. Because you can't perfectly predict the outcome. So you could do the work. Um, so you're just putting that out there. When I started that business, that brutal honesty, and there's so many sharks out there, people are like, wow, why are you telling me this? I'm like, because that's the truth. All right, I want to sign up. Or Nick, can you magically make all these credit disasters go away? No, absolutely not. You need to do your part. You need to start paying your bills. What? I can't afford my bills. Well, I think you need a second job. What? Well, you're obviously not making enough money to afford your bills in this current job. You might need a second job. I can't believe you're saying that. I'm being brutally honest with you. That's the reality. My grandfather came to this country and worked 100 hours a week. Didn't have money. He had to work very, very hard. It's basic math. If you can't make enough money at your job and you can't work more hours, you might need to look for a new job. You might need to go to your boss and say, hey, I need a raise. I can't afford my bills. Here are my bills, boss. Here's what I make. There is a mismatch. And I would do stuff like this. And at first, sometimes it would startle people. Just initially, they'd be like, whoa, 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 whoa. And I would do it in a respectful way. But ultimately, it was very rare someone I met with would actually choose us versus a competitor because they knew they were going to get the truth, and it was refreshing. So in business, transparency and brutal honesty, that's the thing. The thing that's missing in business right now is trust. It's not giving someone some miraculous result. Results are always going to vary. And you can compare services, services and products. They've been fairly commoditized across every industry. Even some fancy app you created. Look, we were on Riverside earlier. Now we're on Squadcast. You know what I mean? It's like um, but being brutally honest and being transparent, highly transparent, spending time to educate potential clients to the point of annoyance, by the way. Like, I once wrote a blog, this was years ago, and it was really, I wish I kept it. I think it's gone as a previous blog, but it was called the Give Them Everything Sales Approach. And the sales approach literally worked like this. Someone calls in and says, hey, I need you to help me with, let's say it's my credit. That was my previous company. And you say, great. Let me look at your credit and show you exactly how you can repair your own credit issues. You spend an hour with them. You literally show them everything. Hey, John, you can do this, 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 this. And you empower people to the point where they're like, oh my God, I didn't call in for someone to teach me how to do something. And this guy's teaching me. He's driving me crazy. And then you're brutal on, you layer in the brutal honesty. And then all of a sudden, it's undeniable that you know what you're talking about. And they do business with you. And if they can't afford you, it's okay because at least you've just empowered another human being to take the initiative themselves, and that's okay too. But what you get, I had so many people that would call and ask me for help, and I would literally just show them everything, the secret sauce across the board, how they can deal with their own financial issues to the point of annoyance because they just wanted someone to wave a magic wand. Hey, Nick, I will give you $1. You give me back $1.25 in value. We're good, right? Um, and then they found out they couldn't afford our services, but they would leave the interaction, um, and they would refer a bunch of people. It was like, so brutal honesty, man, transparency, education. You want selling tools? That's the stuff that sells. You want the quick bullet points of headlines, the stupid tagline pitches. That crap doesn't work in the real world. Charlatans use that stuff, and guess what? Um, everyone always talks about that charlatan. Hey, remember that guy? He was doing that thing back then. How come he's not doing it anymore? Because he was a liar. He needed quick taglines and value props that were not transparent. You have to oversell something versus educate, and it's no good.
Now, Nick, I'm thinking of like the listeners and thinking people maybe haven't maybe achieved a level of success yet. And then they're going to look at what you said and they're going to go, Nick, no, it's not that simple, Nick. Like, no, you're wrong. Like, it can't be that simple that we just have to be open and honest and show people the value we can add, potentially for free, and they will pay us in order to go deeper and do it with them. Why are they wrong?
Oh, I approve. Okay, if you look at the closing percentages on a set of leads that came in through Google or Facebook, and you look at the number of consultations you'll do in a particular business, in my experience, right? Me personally, myself, when I was a sales consultant for my own first company, when I was signing up more than 200 people per month, okay? And um, I decided to slow down our initial consultation, right? The sales call, as some of you like to call it. I slowed it down and I started going through the intricacies of the process. And I started educating, um, and I started um, empowering the consumer and showing them the secret sauce. My conversion rates on channels like Google, right? I would convert 25% of the leads I got. When I started doing that, I was close to 35 and 40%. So I would spend, listen, what are you going to be at work? 8 hours a day, 10 hours a day, 12 hours a day. You're 80% of the day, you're not really even speaking to people. That's the reality of most sales jobs. You're just dialing. So when you get someone on the phone, spend an extra half hour with them, increase your closing percentages by a third by spending an extra half hour with them. You'll notice that the longer you spend with your potential customers, courting them, that courtship, the longer that courtship is, the lower the divorce rate is. Um, and I use that term loosely. But you'll notice that the longer that courtship is, the higher your closing percentages are. And I've documented it multiple times across financial industry, the credit restoration industry, numbers. Jay-Z says it, women lie, men lie, but the numbers, they don't lie. So you don't need fancy stuff to sell.
Talk to me about some of your biggest successes that you've had within business.
I would say some of my biggest successes. I would say success number one is when my first company, Key Credit Repair, when we became profitable. Okay. I'm not talking about, I'm not even talking about $1 million. I'm not even talking about a dollar. Well, actually, I am talking about a dollar. It took us 18 months to get into the black. And I still remember that day. And you'd think I won the lottery. So like for 18 months, I was like spending money from loans, from savings, cashed out my 401k, that was gone. I owed money to my landlord in my house. You can separate business and household finances all you want, but when you're a sole proprietor early on, um, you're not gonna be able to pay rent some months, right? So the day we just were in the black, I was like, wow, that for me was a major success. And for you entrepreneurs right now that are in the black that got there, celebrate that moment. It's a big deal. There are companies that will never go into the black. There are double digit percentage of new businesses that are formed that never ever recoup their initial investment. Okay. And then they end up paying interest on top of that debt that they used to get there. Right? That insult to injury to salt the wound. That personally for me was a major success. And I think that the next major success is when we got our first Inc. 5000 recognition. And in order to qualify for Inc. 5000 recognition, you would have had to have done at least $2 million in revenue and have had a certain percentage of growth in a very, very short period. Um, and I think that was in 2015 or 16. I forget the exact year. But that felt really good. I felt like we had graduated from being a small mom and pop company that we sort of like duct taped together. Like, it was such a mess trying to get this company. Literally, the office roof was leaking. We had buckets everywhere. I mean, it was like that type of startup environment. But when we got that, I was like, wow, we've been recognized by Inc. magazine. Uh, and that felt really good. I was like, this is a business now. This is a real business. This isn't my side hustle. This is a company. Um, and I would say that was a big moment for us, and proud to put that print out on the wall and for the whole team to see it. I think it meant a lot to everybody at the time. So I would say that was our second, and then we did it a couple more times, and it was really cool and freaking scary. So fast growth isn't all it's cracked up to be, because you got to sacrifice a lot of profits and reinvestment and systems and um, turnover to figure it out. And then we probably still haven't figured it out. We're still trying to.
Hey there. Really sorry for interrupting, but I really wanted to let you know about some amazing bonus content we have available for you. You see, not only do we record behind the scenes, but also we go deeper into some of the key topics that come up during the conversation. Now, you can find out more about this and access all of it free of charge over on Facebook. Just search for the Leaky Bucket Podcast Community.
Nick, that probably leads in quite nicely actually to, obviously this is the Leaky Bucket podcast, and the leaky bucket really is all those small issues that actually, if you don't give them enough attention, soon enough they become big issues, and they can really cause big problems within the business. What do you do, particularly during those times of like fast growth? What do you do to make sure that you're being aware of those small issues and that you're reducing the risk of getting just like completely blindsided by them?
Well, when you're growing that quickly, it's very easy to not make a dollar. You know, Phil Knight once was on the brink of bankruptcy, and his company Nike was doing 50 million a year at that point. 50 million a year, and he was like, "I'm days away from bankruptcy." Okay, so when we were going through that very very fast growth period, to grow quickly when you're acquiring clients online, with a product that you're not being paid upfront on, where you can get that cash reinvested. Essentially, what happens is you're reinvesting profits from previous sales, today for the potential of future sales. So what happens is your cash flow is sometimes like so tight that you're struggling to even scrape up the money for payroll. So I think it's very important early on to establish some parameters, um, because it's so easy to have a leaky bucket. When we started early on in the company, we had this great phrase we used to use, or maybe I just used it and told it to myself, and it was protect your profit, protect your margin. What's your margin? That's it. That's where you live. And back then we would have 40% margins, 50% margins. But it was a small side hustle at that point called, right? So it's easy when you're doing all the work to have these high margins because it's not a business. That's just when you're self-employed. So I think when we graduated to the point where we're reinvesting ad dollars to grow and create a company, we didn't create those standards early on enough. We were just reinvesting capital. And I think what we needed to have in place at that point was a threshold for how quickly we're willing to grow so we wouldn't mess with our cash flow. Okay. And then the second thing is a minimum cash on cash profit margin that we knew after everyone was paid, this is what the business was going to leave us, um, where we didn't continue sacrificing profit margins for growth, or we had a threshold for it. Okay, that way we wouldn't go broke through those very very fast growth years. Um, and those are very easy parameters to set up. I didn't know this then. I didn't know anything. You know what I mean? I didn't even have a bookkeeper doing my books. Back then, it was literally like, I wonder how much I made this year. I'd literally give all the financials, like bank account statements to the accountant, and he would tell me, I'm like, wow, I made that. I didn't know. Like, um, but there are some parameters, what you're willing to pay in marketing and sales to acquire a customer. Okay, that's your biggest expense. What's your CAC, customer acquisition cost, or CPA, some people call it, cost per acquisition. What's the most you're willing to pay? And stick to it. Don't go beyond that. Okay. Because when you give yourself a cap on what you're willing to pay to acquire customers. And really, when you give yourself a cap on anything you're willing to pay for, what you find is you become smarter. Oh, I can only pay to acquire customer. I can only pay $100 to acquire a customer on Google. I'm spending $100,000 a month with Google. Google is telling me I can get 50% more customers if I'm only spending $125. No, don't do it. Don't sacrifice your profits. Don't start moving the goalpost every single time that your ego is crushed and you can't grow your business more, because really you're just sacrificing profits and creating what? You're just creating busy work. You're in business to make money. You're not in business to like feed your ego that you grew. And in fact, I got to squash some of this fast growth Inc. 5000 stuff. People aren't going to want to hear this. But for you guys right now that are just trying to make the Inc. 5000 list, you better check yourself right now. Okay. If you do 3 years in a row of Inc. 5000 and you look back at your tax returns and you made the same amount of money, you just fed your ego. And I've done that too. So stop moving the goalposts. Create your KPIs. What am I willing to acquire customers for? That's the number. Once you hit a ceiling in a particular marketing channel, you stop. Get creative. Come up with another marketing channel. Test out another way to acquire customers. Okay. We've gone to the point where we maximized Google and we couldn't grow anymore in Google. What did we do? We went to Bing. Then we went to Facebook. We're running TV ads right now. Who's running TV ads? We're running TV ads. Why? Because if we can hit that KPI, we're getting customers from there. Then you got to look at other things. You know, what is the lifetime value? What's the average revenue you're getting out of each client? Are you not taking on worse clients to feed your ego and get more sales? And not sacrificing your margin as well? Cut it out. Look for quality clients. So I would say, you know, protect your profit. Okay. Don't get caught up in the fluff. Don't be buying every e-course under the sun. Don't be signing up for every stupid piece of software you probably don't need. People were making millions and billions and trillions of dollars well before all the shiny objects on the internet showed up. You can make millions and billions, trillions of dollars and still protect your profit margins and run a very healthy company. LTVs, cherish them. That's typically your biggest expense. And then watch out on all the unnecessary things. And don't get caught up in shiny object syndrome. Don't get caught up in events you don't need to be hosting. Don't be caught up in, you know, I've heard people say, "Oh, we're going to do this big thing. It's a write-off." It's a write-off. Okay, so you're sacrificing 60% of profit to save 30% in taxes or 40% in taxes. That makes no sense. So protect those margins. And if your business changes, great. You're gonna evolve. Okay. If you've gone from a mom and pop that's making a 50% margin and you've read the E-Myth Revisited that says that's not a business, you're just self-employed, and you know you need to staff up and replace yourself. Okay. That might be the only time you adjust the goalpost, where you say, okay, from 50%, if I'm hiring all these people, a real business operates at 20% and 25 or whatever that number is. Speak to your peers. What's the industry standards? Maybe set a higher standard to them, and stick to it. And then watch when you're capped and there's a ceiling, you'll become more creative and you'll become much smarter. We even faced this at the marketing agency. When we first started out, it was a startup 2 years ago. And the first thing we did, because we have experience in marketing, let's run ads. Let's run ads. Well, the client acquisition cost in our industry, $2,000 or $3,000. As a new business, you've got to cash flow that. So what did we say? Policy was, we're not running ads for our own agency, which seems insane. But why did we do that? Because we knew if we couldn't run ads, if we set that policy, then what are we going to do? We're going to go out and network more. Okay. We're going to go and see people. We're going to have more meetings throughout the day. We're going to have more free time. And ultimately, we're going to get creative and we're going to make more calls. We're going to reach out to our network a little bit more, until we get the revenue established enough that we can reinvest some of that revenue in ads and we can start acquiring people online. And then we're changing, you know, we're changing, you know, from a small startup, self-employed, to an actual enterprise and a business. And we're going to adjust our margins then to accommodate a client acquisition model. Good. But don't sacrifice those margins. Rule number 1.
Yeah. Love it, Nick. I was talking to a group of other accountants recently, and I just mentioned when we were talking about gaining new customers and clients and whatever, I just mentioned to go, look, we've got a waiting list of 20 plus clients. And they were like, why would you have a wait? Why would you not just take them now? And we're like, growth consumes cash. And I like the life I have.
Yeah.
And I don't want to sacrifice my cash to serve these people in the short term while we get them to a profitable state. At this moment in time, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't stack up. Then why would you not
I
take
love
it?
that.
Yeah. And it's something we've stuck by. It was actually, so our business is myself and my wife, right? And when we rolled into the recession, naturally being in, accounting or whatever, we were inundated with the possibility of taking new clients. And actually she recognized and saw a risk. And come July 2020, we just turned off advertising and we just went, you know what? Unless you're absolutely an ideal client, you just can't come in.
Yeah.
And we did that all the way until 2022. And what it taught us was all those things where we were like, we've got to get creative. We've got to make sure we actually reversed engineered. It wasn't, can we say yes? It was actually, can this potential client get over all of these hurdles, which are us saying no? And if they can get over all of those, we go, this is a really good fit person that we can really, really help. And it's going to make such a difference. And our business is massively different, in terms of profitability and the level of impact we have in clients is hugely different. So yeah,
There are more and more examples of businesses that are actually getting higher valuations. Okay. In the past, what did we do, right? We were like, okay, how much did you make? Add a multiplier. That's your value. I'll buy you, or I'll sell my business, right? That was like basic how you buy a business stuff. Like you could do it on a napkin. Like you could literally buy a business with napkin math. If you, and obviously then go and confirm the details later on before you close the deal. But you can negotiate a deal with napkin math, right? But now you have companies that are getting these valuations that the earnings aren't anywhere near, when you look at the multiple, it's so absurd. Like that justification just doesn't make sense. But these companies are getting these huge valuations, and a lot of those companies are actually companies that have things like waiting lists. They build out these like scarcity models, and there's value in that. Usually, they're highly profitable in terms of margin, even though they're not these big, fat monster machines. Um, I really loved on Sunday. I went to visit one of my old employees, who's a good friend of mine. He opened up a new Greek restaurant not too far from my house, and his first restaurant was a huge success, and it's actually a big footprint. It's a massive structure. And I went to the new restaurant. It was quite smaller. I think it was like 15 tables. And I told him, I was like, Stavros, man, this place is packed. Like, you need a bigger place. And he's like, no. It's like, I don't want one. Like, what do you mean? He goes, people can't get in on Saturday because it's the best word of mouth. People can't get in here, and they're talking about it. He said the only complaint I've gotten so far about the restaurant is people complaining they can't get in. He's like, that is the best form of marketing I've ever seen, and it's feeding on itself. And I'll tell you, on the surface, right away when I looked at his brand, I was like, this brand is incredibly valuable. I don't know what his register's ringing. Obviously, he's doing pretty good if can't let people in. Um, his margins must be better, right? Because if there's that much of a demand, you can charge a premium for your product. So that's awesome. Check that box. And the brand is just strong. Like your initial, um, the feeling you get is that this is a strong company, and I give him a lot of credit for that. I think it was a really cool statement and incredibly mature of him, because you could easily get shiny object syndrome when you got people waiting outside and say, you know what, let's go get another space quick. Let's buy the next door. Let's knock down the wall. Let's blow it up. And then you're at 80% capacity. You have 10 empty tables, and you don't look so hot anymore. And then as a result, that snowballs into, yeah, they're not doing too good. I don't know. That place isn't too popular. And obviously, that doesn't mean you have to take away from the fact that you can scale, you can grow, you can, but you probably want to do it with measurement, like don't just scale to scale. Scale because you're bursting at the seams, and do it slowly and thoughtfully so you continue creating that sort of scarcity. And I think it's marvelous.
Nick, you mentioned earlier about smile, right? And just smile back at people, right? But actually, you mentioned it in such a way, you made it sound like really, really easy. But actually, I can think of plenty of occasions where it's really not easy. How do you remind yourself in moments where you go to not smile and maybe be angry or react not as you like? How do you remind yourself and go, no, I just need to smile? And
I don't always. That's the truth. I don't. I try to be as conscious about it as possible. And if I'm in a bad mood, I fake it. That's the reality. Because when you smile, usually when you're happy, you smile. But if you smile enough, you start to become happy. So I use it as a hack to try to pick up my mood when I'm having a bad day. I'll start cracking jokes. When I'm really stressed out, I start to crack jokes with my friends or my family. I've been in some really stressful situations where you're at a hospital or something bad's happening, and you're like, let me throw a joke out there. Let me lighten things up. Um, you really don't want to. You'd rather be pissed or scared or fearful or whatever that negative feeling you're having in that moment is. But you gotta like get out of it. And if that's one of the hacks that's worth, smiling and being thankful and showing appreciation, then I'll try it when I'm having a bad day. Just be conscious of it. Be aware as much as you can of your state.
brilliant. Nick, I think you alluded obviously to some of the successes, and we talked about it earlier about shiny objects and so on. But I think people who maybe are going through tougher times and not being successful look at successful people and think, oh, they've got it so easy. Like, tell me about something that maybe isn't quite going your way at the moment, and what are a big challenge that you've got that you're fighting
Yeah.
is.
Yeah. I can give examples, I can give scenarios, and I can give kind of analogies too. For those of you right now that are eating shit, excuse my language, but really like your day is not going well. Your month, your year, possibly even your decade. But for some strange reason, whatever business you're in, you seem to believe in it. I don't know why, only you know why, right? You got to have a bit of a weird fire, partial delusion to probably stick to whatever business you're in. All of us do that are self employed. We tend to be borderline delusional. Um, if you're new at this, you really need to get good at losing. Okay. If I were to look at the trajectory of my wins and losses over the course of a decade, this is it, right? Like if this was a chart, it would be loss, 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 loss. You continue to lose every day. You're like, crap, crap, shit, shit. Oh my God, fire, fire, fire. And then it hits, bink, the win. The wins, the wins tend to happen, over very, very short periods of time, but then elevate your standards, right? So you're losing the majority of the time, but when you win, the win is an unbelievable feeling. If you're allergic to losing, you should probably go get a job. Okay. If you can't deal with stress and literally losing in this game, you really should just go get a job, right? Because the whole journey is pain. The whole journey is pain. It's very, very difficult. But when you win, it's a beautiful thing. You win freedom, you win money, you can take care of people, you can create jobs, you can help people within your company move up and build careers, and their kids can possibly build careers there. There's these amazing blessings, but you got to be willing to sacrifice big time. the analogy I use is marathons. There are a high percentage of CEOs that have run marathons, right? And I started running them in 2016. I'm not a runner. You know, if you met me, you're like, that guy doesn't run. But there's something about the process of spending, you know, because 6 months to a year sometimes, just your feet hurt, your legs hurt, your knees hurt, your face hurts, your teeth hurt. I don't know, everything hurts. And then you go to the race, and then, you know, especially if you're going to push yourself, feel that glory at the end, it's all going to hurt. uh, it's going to be hard. You're going to be dehydrated. But then at the end, you get this medal. You walk across that finish line. It's a split second. It's literally a split second. If you were to match up the time, the actual hours and the minutes and the seconds that you're losing compared to the few seconds that you're winning, oh my God, on paper, it doesn't make sense. But when you cross that finish line, you have a feeling of, sometimes it's not even happiness because you're still in a lot of pain, but you have this feeling of fulfillment that is undescribable. And you get to actually have that win with you for the rest of your life, that fulfillment. You can't take it away. So it's very similar in business. I mean, really, it's truly a marathon. And I think that's why so many CEOs are running marathons, because they can conceptualize the process of losing all day long, pain all day long, training all day long, and so on. I'll tell you, you know, you asked the question, what are the difficult things I'm dealing with right now? I mean, you name it. I would say in one of my businesses, we've hit a difficult plateau where we cannot find that next marketing channel. And as a result, it's actually very scary. Okay. So we spent some time this summer where, not being able to find another marketing channel for growth, one of our main marketing channels decided to not service the industry. And overnight, we lost 80% of 75% of the traffic to our website that we were getting clients for. That was incredibly scary, incredibly frightening. And you could see more than 10 years worth of your work potentially just, you know, go to ashes in days. That was frightening, very scary. But what it also is humbling. You're reminded how blessed you are. If you're busy right now, remind yourself how blessed you are to be in that position. You didn't create much of anything yourself, okay? You were blessed with most of what you have, okay? Because in a day, a marketing channel could shut down, an industry could change, a law could change that doesn't allow you to do what you do, or maybe brings in more people to the marketplace. Sometimes deregulation floods people into a marketplace, and now your services and margins are diluted. So, you know, when that, you know, count your blessings right now and stop telling yourself how great you did. I built this business. I'm self-made. Oh, if I have to hear another entrepreneur saying they're self-made, I mean, you really should just, I mean, you should really, if you're self-made and you have 50 staff members and you have multiple marketing channels and you have business partners and colleagues sending you business, and you have hundreds or thousands or millions of clients that are willing to do business with you, and you're saying to the world that you're self-made, man, be careful, because God quickly corrects people, puts them in check very, very quickly. The second you become self-made, and you'd be lucky to have that blessing to correct yourself, to correct who you are. I had that scare. It wasn't the first scare I've had in business. So when that happened quickly, I was like, okay, we need to take a breath. Everything is going to be okay. God does not bring you this far to let you fail now. Okay. Everything, you know, there's a lot of these slogans. I used to get a lot of them from coach, right? Uh, you don't go this far. He doesn't bring you this far to have you fail. Also, not everything is happening to you. It is happening for you. Okay. We were blessed enough to have resolved that issue. It was some sort of miracle. But in the meantime, it made us reflect on a few things. Simple things. Hey, how much cash reserves do we have to weather a storm like that as a company? We need to get serious about our margins. We were getting a little too serious about growth in that period. Okay. Um, let's look at everything. What marketing channels are we too heavily reliant on right now? Have we built an infrastructure, positions in a career based on marketing channels that are not very stable? Okay. Um, well, you build a house on quicksand, it's going to be gone soon. You need to have foundational things in place. So maybe we need to look at our referral business a little bit stronger. Maybe we need to look at, maybe we need to explore their channel. So what did we do? Very quickly, we got into television, started running TV ads, right? More stable marketing channel, longer burn, more branding, but maybe we need to do that. Maybe we need to have a billboard up. I don't know, but we need to diversify our marketing channels. So I would say that was a very scary moment as of recent, and one that we were blessed enough to get through, and one that quickly deflated the ego that had slowly, if the ego is, it's like this balloon, right? If it's deflated right now because of an emergency or fire in your business, um, you didn't put a pin in it. You can't reinflate a balloon that has a pin in it. Usually the air was let out, okay? And it starts inflating again. So you become high on yourself and what you've done and what I've built and I'm self-made and everyone in the team, even the salespeople. Look at these deals I closed today. Well, you spoke to the customer, but the customer came from a marketing channel over there. Are you being thankful for that? Because that could be gone like that, you know? Um, it's important when your ego, that balloon is blown up to either yourself in some capacity or someone else. They take a pin and they put a hole in it to ensure that it's never blown up again. Because if it's just simply deflated, it will be inflated again. So it's very important. That pin, I would say, is a little scarring. Remember those days, write them down. They will be very valuable for you when you're dealing with high times, because those days will pass as well, as well as the bad days.
Yeah. No, I think what was clear there, right, is this comes back to one of the early questions about would you rather win with no issues at all or fall short and learn something? Like actually everything you mentioned there, you were straight into what can I learn? What can we change? How can we improve? How can we prevent this to happen again? But actually, right, that moment of shift, when you have that fire that you call it, or that deflation mode or whatever it might be, it's so easy in that moment to react emotionally and start making emotional decisions. But actually, everything you talked about was you started making logical decisions based on facts, based on information, based on risk assessment. How did you make that shift to go, you can't stop reacting emotionally? You're going to do that. How did you make that shift to go, okay, I'm reacting emotionally, but I need to make logical decisions, not emotional ones?
I used to be the most emotionally reactive person, and I still, with this scenario, in many of the fires that I've dealt with in my very short journey, right? I'm still reactive emotionally. I'm less, okay? So I've definitely gotten used to it. When when those old timers are like, "Hey, you can't replace experience," what they should do is like, you can't replace experience when you're dealing with emergencies, right? So that's you deal with enough fires, you end up getting used to going to a burning house, right? You're just used to it. Firemen don't think; they just go in. The first day they showed up and there was a fire in the house, they're like, "Yeah, I don't know. I don't know about this one. Maybe the other guy goes in first." Um, so from experience, I would say I built a thicker skin. I haven't built a thick skin yet, though. I wouldn't qualify it as thick. So I did get reactive, and I surround myself with really amazing people like my wife, who was like, "Yo, remember that last fire? Remember the one before? Remember the one before? You're still here. And she corrected me. I surrounded myself with family. Literally, people like my grandmother. My grandmother doesn't speak English. I was in Greece when this fire happened. I was in Greece visiting my grandmother, and she said, "What's wrong?" And I told her, and she said, "You're going to be okay. Have faith." Right? My uncle, "Yeah, you'll be good. You'll be fine. You always pull it. You always pull through. You do great. You'll do great." I'm like, really? Like, what are the, they're so far removed from my day to day, but they're people that love and care about me and quickly reminding me that, hey, things are getting, so I think things are going to be okay. So I think it's very important to surround yourself with loving people that care about you to quickly help you gain some perspective in those moments when you're about to absolutely lose your, you know what? And they will bring you back to earth. Okay. And then for me, whenever I have these fires, I consider it a blessing because I tend to stray away from my own personal spiritual path. Um, and whenever there's an emergency, what do I always do? I get down on my knees and pray, right? So what a blessing. I come closer to God. This is my perception, might not be everyone's, but I come closer to God. So again, it's another blessing. Everything happens for you, not to you. So when those moments happen, I end up getting that connection. I call it the 5G signal. There are more bars that immediately go up. I'm more clear with my connection to the creator. And I spend some time talking to my creator. I spend time talking to God, and I'll go to church and I'll light candles. And I realize that things sometimes are a little bit more out of my hands. Um, and once I surrender to that, it's interesting. No one wants to surrender, and I had a friend of mine, a coach of mine, having me read a book called The Surrender Experiment about a really cool business guy who had been going through all these fires, and he was like, he would see me in my emotional roller coasters, and he'd be like, "Read this book, Surrender," and I'd be like, I would say, I would say, "Adam, I'm not surrendered. I don't surrender. I don't do this surrender stuff. I don't know what you're talking about. I never surrender because in business, you watch these motivational videos. You never surrender, never quit, never die. You're the man. Yours is fight, fight, fight." That is a load of shit, right? Those motivational videos are good to get you charged up and energized that day. But really, what you actually have to do to think clearly and logically is to become unemotional. So you center yourself, you meditate, you pray, you become closer to your creator, you become closer to God. And all of a sudden, now you can think clearly. Now you can sit down and look at things without fear. So a friend of mine, we debate this book, Surrender Experiment, all the time. We're like, we both talk about this. How can we surrender, right? And I was telling you the other night, we actually met with that coach. We both use this coach. And he mentioned the book again. And I was telling him, I was like, "Hey, Saba," I go, "I think I figured out what surrender means." He's like, "What?" I was like, "I think it means we're not supposed to have fear. If we're in a fearful state, it's tough for us to make logical decisions." And actually, there's chemicals in our brain. We're in a fearful state, and we have cortisol release and all that stuff. It actually does block brain activity. So when we become faithful, when we meditate, when we pray, when we surrender to the circumstances, then we can take all the factors logically and start to take steps for improvement. But we can't do that unless we go through those stages. So I think there should be like, if we had to put it on a diagram, it's like bad thing happens. Initially, emotion. In business, I promise all of you listening, whatever bad thing you're happening right now is not life threatening. It might be lifestyle threatening, and that's just your ego talking, right? Because if you don't make the money you're gonna make this month, you might not be able to pay for your Maserati payment. That's lifestyle threatening. You will be okay. I've been there. Okay. It's not a life threatening situation 99.9% of the time in all of your business stuff. Okay. Acknowledge it, right? And then go to phase two. Phase two is surround yourself with people that love and care about you and talk to them. They will give you perspective. And the ones that are positive and care about you, even if they're not in your business, they don't have to be They don't have to know the nuances of whatever you do. Just be your grandmother. Literally, grandmother. My grandmother didn't have shoes until she was 13 or something. She's giving me advice for my business that's more valuable than, most of these business gurus on YouTube, right? So get yourself around people that love and care about you and get your perspective quick. Boom. Fear, perspective, stage 2. Stage 3, get centered. Get into your church, get on your knees and pray, get into your meditation, get connected to your creator, whatever that is for you. Okay. And once you get centered, and you feel good and you realize that you should not have fear because fear is a choice. Okay. Don't mistake your initial reaction to the fire as the fear that you carry with you ongoing. That initial reaction is healthy. It's good. That's that initial fear. I'm talking about the fear that you take with you every day for the rest of your life and you end up having a heart attack at 40 or 50, right? That's the fear you're going to get rid of with those spiritual practices. And once you do that and you're centered and you've removed that emotion and you're clear, then go into strategy. What am I going to do to get out of this situation in a very logical and practical way? Emotional people tend to get into business. And by the way, those are the 4 phases. Emotional people tend to get into business because they want freedom and they're emotional, right? But if you actually look at the most successful business people, they tend to not be these super emotional types, right? They're clear, they're concise, they're stable, they're just level. Every conversation you have with them doesn't have super highs and lows. There's level people. Those people can stay in that logical, clear state consistently all the time. And they're just making decisions based on what they're surrounded with logically. Try to be that person as much as you can.
Awesome. I love it, Nath. I love the people don't, particularly in the UK, I think as well, there's this element of by faith, and there's, people don't necessarily lean on that as much as probably what they have done in the past. I think the fact that it brings you so much stability and so much of this, what you call like censoring yourself, I think it's brilliant. And I love it. I think it's great. Nick, I've got a little, sort of closing tradition with the podcast with a bit of a quirky question. But before we go there, where can people find out more about you, about your agency, and what you guys do?
So the spin-off of my entrepreneurial journey has been a digital marketing agency. That's how we have gotten clients over the years, and now we do it for about 30 businesses here in the United States and actually in the UK as well too. So if you need help growing your enterprise, not too quickly, God forbid, we don't want to have your accountant yell at you. But if you're looking to grow your enterprise and you need help either running ads more efficiently, lowering your cost per acquisition, uh, possibly even delegating out some of the digital marketing tasks you're doing yourself that are just killing your day and you're just losing your mind, reach out to us. We tend to be the you call us the digital marketing department of larger small businesses. So if you have a company that has 10 or 20 employees and above and you're looking to scale, you can go to realtop.com. That's the name of our company, RealTop. RealTop.com. The second you get to the website, you're going to see video testimonials for clients we've had that own businesses, dental practices, law firms, medical practices, IT companies, you name it. But you can go there and request a free marketing strategy. You can also email me. My email is Nik at realtop.com. And or hit me up on DM on Instagram. My Instagram is Nikitas, my full name, Nikitas.com. You can DM me and say, hey, I heard you on the Leaky Bucket podcast, and let's be friends, connect.
Awesome. So, Nick, closing question, right, is if tomorrow you had to start a brand new business, but it's completely unrelated to what you currently do, what would it be and why?
I started a coffee shop. I started a coffee shop all day long. It would be a coffee shop.
And why is that? Just love coffee?
I like coffee a lot. That's a big thing. I'm a coffee aficionado, or more of an espresso aficionado, and there's a big coffee culture in Greece, so it's part of our vibe, I would say. Um, but I just love the simplicity of it, right? You make someone a really good cup of coffee, they're in a bad mood. 2 seconds later, they've got a smile on their face, and your job all day long is literally taking people out of bad moods. The product is simple. It speaks for itself. You can do it really bad or really well. So you can just focus on making a simple product that really has become a commodity in our world really, really well and deliver a good experience uh, around it. And when I was a kid, I grew up in my dad's donut shops. My dad owned donut shops. And I love I love working for him. I love making people coffee. I know it seems simple, but I still remember I see people on the street sometimes, Boston, that were his customers, and I remember their coffees. I know John Daly he had a small black, dark, no, he had a small coffee, dark, sugar and a half. Like I remember people's coffees, uh, and I think community is such a beautiful thing, and the idea of putting a coffee shop in a community and just having your regulars and seeing them and high-fiving them and seeing their kids grow up in a place. I think there's something beautiful behind it. I don't know if I'd make money doing it, you know. I don't, eventually the money would come, but I think it would be a real kick to do that.
Brilliant. It's probably the fastest answer that anybody's come to with that. Most people have to think for a fair while to work out what it's going to be. So, yeah, very clear on what you do. Nick, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show. I really love the fact that actually you've really delved into some key areas. You've been open and honest, and and shown us that actually being successful isn't an easy ride. There's plenty of pains and challenges and failures along the way. So thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Ian, for having me on. This was a lot of fun.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of the Leaky Bucket podcast. I'd love it if you could help spread the message by clicking subscribe and leaving a review. Also, please do reach out to me on LinkedIn and let me know your thoughts on this episode. You can also find more info and links in the show notes below. See you next time.